Hi, welcome to this live webinar. We're talking about Cyprus tax returns that are due now for expats that are living and working in Cyprus. It's a bit of midsummer madness in what we're doing today because the Cyprus tax returns were due from the end of March, and they were launched with a fanfare with the introduction of tax for all, which was a good plan in many ways, except that it didn't work. And within a couple of days, the tax system had to be taken down, and they sort of start a process which is dragged on now, and coming to the end of June, we still can't submit any returns for clients online. So looking at what the requirements are specifically for Cyprus expats and specifically for Cyprus tax returns, and what the implications of that might be. So if you're a Cyprus tax resident, next week we look at the midsummer, the second part of the midsummer, which is on an annual calendar basis. On an annual calendar basis, the sorry, I've just got a message that's come up, and I'm not sure what's if there's a problem. Although I think I fixed it. That's my distraction. So it's halfway through the year. So anybody that's living in a country with an annual tax year, so the tax year is the calendar year to the end of December. From the 4th of July, you are tax resident in that country if you've been there for the whole year, and possibly going beyond that in terms of you might be deemed tax resident, you might be required to do a tax return, whether you intended to or not. So those are issues that need to be looked at, not just for Cyprus, but for any expat living in a country where they've been based in that country since the start of the year. For more information and guidance, contact us at proactpartnership.com, and we'll sort out the midsummer madness, and watch our live webinar on the Living and Working Abroad channel next week about the intricacies of, do I need to complete a return now that I'm tax resident or not tax resident, as the case may be. So that's all for next week. So let's have a look at what the situation is in Cyprus. From March, tax returns were due, and they were due to be submitted by the end of April, with any balancing tax payments to be made. That's now been pushed back. We still can't, at the end of June, complete a tax return online for 2022, but the deadline has been announced in the last week or so that the returns can now be submitted by the end of September. I always, to be early is to be on time, and so I always say that precisely, but the exact date is the 2nd of October. If you've got a balancing tax payment, or you've got a tax payment to make for 2022 in Cyprus, you can't currently make that tax payment. You can only make that tax payment if you have an opportunity. And the only way to get an opportunity to pay tax for 2022 is to either submit a return, which would generate a link to make that payment, or it would be to sort of generate that link, or to receive an assessment. But the assessment for 2023 tax in Cyprus might not come through for a few years yet. In 2023, we are currently getting assessments for 2017-18, so 5 years behind. It's good for the Cyprus tax office, as they thought in the past, but it is quite an ancient system that they do in keeping these delayed assessments. There's something that's improving, but it's something that needs to be addressed as well. So for more help and information and guidance, contact us at proactpartnership.com. Do you need a tax return? Who needs to do a tax return in Cyprus? This is a grey area, and it's something that's being refined year by year. So last year, for the 2021 returns in Cyprus, they reaffirmed and revised the who needs to complete a return in any case. People that definitely need to do a return every year are people that have died and are people that are selling a house. If you're selling a property in Cyprus, that there is a capital gains assessment, so that's tax clearance that needs to be made, any tax paid, uh, not just for the property, the municipal taxes, the capital gains on that property disposal, but also any personal taxes for the beneficial owner of that property. So if you're selling property, then you have to have a tax return completed. If you owned a property for 10 years in Cyprus, not completed a return, when you come to sell that property, you will be asked to do at least 7 years worth of tax returns. So completing a tax return each year is prudent in helping you prepare for what you need to do at some point in the future. When you die, your estate will need the same requirement. You will need a tax return for each year that you're alive. So although and so there will come a time at a point, if you die as a Cyprus tax resident or you sell a property as a Cyprus tax resident, you will need a tax return for each year in which you did. The actual law in Cyprus says if your income is below 19,500, you don't need to complete a tax return for income tax. But they do mean income tax. So if your salary is below 19,500 from a Cyprus source that's been declared for national insurance and health tax payments, then you don't need to complete a tax return. If you've got overseas income or any other worldwide income, since 2019, there is a health tax which varies between 1.5% and 2.5% approximately that needs to be paid on your worldwide income. So a pension from overseas, a contracting income from overseas, dividends, interest, royalties, or property rental income from overseas could all be liable to that health tax. And you would need to either receive special exemptions from that taxable income, or you would need to receive it to be paid at source. And this is why a salaried person earning under 19.5 doesn't need to do a tax return, because all their social insurance and health tax is accounted for in that social insurance payment. So for more information and guidance on do I need to complete a return, contact us at projectpartnership.com. If you're running a business in a company and then or a larger sole trader thing, you'll also need an audit with your tax return. Now that's a separate additional process. So you do your accounts, you submit those. So a self-employed person needs to then complete their tax return in the same time frame as somebody with pension, investment, or earned income. But if an audit is required by a sole trader or a company, then the tax return is not due by the end of September 23. It's due by March the following year to get that return up to date. Because there is the extra time and work that needs to be done on the audit. So for more information and guidance on that, contact us at projectpartnership.com. Property rental income is taxed at source. So the property is the taxable entity, and if you're renting it out, the property is receiving that income tax for that property rental, and therefore that is where the tax liability arises. So that's been clarified over the last few years in the UK, and any property rental income, any property sale for capital gains purposes is income that is deemed to be generated, earned, and paid in the UK. They even changed the law in the UK so that you can't defer property rental sale capital gains tax in the UK. It is just a thing that has to be paid there. But if you're getting that property rental income in the UK, then you've got another issue to consider, is that that is taxable in the UK, but it could also be reportable in Cyprus. So it's not necessarily exempt in Cyprus. It could be subject to a special defence tax at 3%, unless you've got a non-dom tax registration. It could also be subject to a health tax at maybe 2.6%. So you've got those potential additional taxes in addition to what you're paying in the UK. So it's quite a complicated situation. So an expat living and working abroad and renting out UK property has got an obligation to complete a tax return in the UK on that property rental income, but could also have a tax liability in Cyprus or their country of residency for that as well. So for more information on property rental and whether you need a UK and a Cyprus tax return, contact us at proactpartnership.com. The worldwide income as a whole is liable to health tax in Cyprus. So wherever your income is arising, then potentially you've got a liability to the health tax. Now that might be revised and amended for the 2022 return and possibly retrospectively. So as the law stands for 2022, even if you've got income that is exempt from taxes in Cyprus for special defence or for income, or it's treated specially for pensions, you could still have a liability to this health tax. Now, if we can get clarity on that this year, that would be very good. And there are a law change and then a system change to accommodate that law change will be part of what allows us to do that. But you do have to bear in mind that the health tax is what's causing the problem. And even if you've got a contract where you're working 9 months of the year in another jurisdiction, that liability could still arise in Cyprus for the health tax on that income, even if it's not an income tax liability in Cyprus. So for more information and guidance on that, contact us at proactpartnership.com. So what we've done today is given a brief overview of what the Cyprus tax regime is. Let me now set out the due dates for everything. The full tax return for 2022 is due before the end of September. It can't be submitted at the end of June, but we're looking for that portal to be opened at some time. Once that portal is created and the tax return is submitted, you'll then get a special code which will allow you to make a payment of any balance of tax that's due for 2022, which is due by the end of September or absolutely by the 2nd of October 2023. If you have an audit for corporation tax as a company or as a sole trader, then your tax return and the payments are due by March 2024. So you've got a bit longer to do it on that. In addition, during the current year, if you have an income tax liability, self-assessments are due on current year income in July and December each year, and to part pay any tax that's due. So if you've got income that's above 20,000 a year and it's liable to income tax in Cyprus, then that tax is potentially self-assessed and should be paid in July and December each year. Any balance or shortfall from that is then paid after the subsequent year's tax return. So the tax returns, for example, for 2022, when they go in, will generate any balancing payments, whether they be for health tax, a property rental tax, a special defence tax, or an income tax, can be paid on that. But the majority, more than 3/4 of any income tax liability, should already have been paid in the year the income arose, i.e. 22. So paying 2023 income tax, that is due from July, and those payments and systems are available. And if you want help and guidance on submitting those returns, making those payments, contact us at partnership.com, where we can give you help and a guidance to submit those returns by the end of July for payment by the end of August. So the return is due by the end of July. The payment is not overdue until after the end of August. And ditto with December. Although they have also got this propensity that they could require you to make the payment by the end of December just to close off the year. Generally, you should be allowed to pay the December payment by the end of January. And then any balancing payment in a normal year where the tax return is submitted by the end of April, the balance of tax can be paid then. So that summarises the whole of the Cyprus current tax liability for companies, self-employed, sole traders, and then anybody with an income tax liability from property rental, from earned income, from pension income, or other investments. If you've not got the appropriate tax registration to avoid health, property rental, dividend and interest taxes as a non-dom or an expat, then you could have some sort of liability. But even if you feel you have no liability now and you don't complete a tax return because there's no tax to pay now, have in mind that you've still got a tax return to complete either when you sell a property in Cyprus or when you die. For more information and guidance, contact us at partnership.com, and with you across borders and down generations every step of the way. Thanks a lot for listening. We'll see you next time. That's finished.